I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with two of the artists that brought the Banshees of Inisherin to life, production sound mixer Simon Willis and re-recording mixer Chris Burdon. Guys, there's sometimes this perception that more sound equals the best sound, and that misses the point on many occasions when it comes to utilizing silences and subtle ambient sound to propel the narrative, particularly when there's a lot of really interesting dialogue like this film. So, talk me through this, Chris. The delicate balance between calibrating dialogue and ambient sound in a film like this.
It was a little bit of an evolution in terms of because as a mixer if you're fortunate enough like I am, you mix a whole mixture genre of films, from blockbusters to medium size to they have a whole variation of layering of sound effects, music and dialogue. And this film was actually a natural evolution from Martin and from the previous two films I'd worked with him, Seven Psychopaths and Three Billboards. You could tell he was focusing more and more on a really pared back soundscape. And so we were aware of that from a preview mix we did with him, where he just wants to focus. We offered up, the sea, the back, the beautiful cinematography, allowing for backgrounds with sea wash and the camera moves, allowing for all these things. And we pared it back and we held it back. And the tremendous thing for me, initially technically and then subsequently creatively, was that they are some of the best location recordings I've ever had. And you can take any scene, you can pick a scene with Brendan and Colin sitting outside the pub, and they are, I don't know how many yards away from the seas, the waves, and you have the richest, most beautiful sound that I could EQ and just give the richest. These are guys who have got big physical presence, and and it changes. There's Dominic with a slightly smaller physique and all this stuff, and all those things you can actually transmit to the audience. You can communicate all those elements, which you don't always have that option. You have to ADR it, you have to record the sound afterwards. So it was just this wonderful kind of coming together of Martin more and more in tandem with the editor Mikhail wanting this pared back soundscape that basically even the music plays very beautifully, subtly through these. Yeah. It never dominates. It just allows the space. And so we had this track that's, some people have been surprised by how empty that, the soundscape we've created. But the more and more the response to the film has meant, you just go, Martin, the genius, the dialogue, the writing, the acting is just has its place, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful to work on. It's, as I said, it varies. The next month I can be on something that is just, there is an opposite version of that where you're filling every space with every sound effect and every bit of music, and it's a different narrative. But this is just, I think, very special actually because of that. It's yeah.
Yeah, and Simon, I mean, given your forte with location sound mixing, I assume as a layperson, I would think in a movie like this that is so austere in its soundscape, it's not like you're doing nothing and just letting it just whatever, we'll just throw that together. There's so much work involved in putting us into this uncomfortable, awkward space between these two men where we can, I can't even put it into words actually. Why don't I just leave it over to you? Like, explain to me what you're trying to achieve there with this, with the location sounds.
Well, you do have the presence, right? So you've got the great voices of the two of them, especially because they're the backbone. And when we're outside the pub, we'll say, or whatever, you're there and you have it. It's there. It's just right over there, and it's coming in and it's coming out, and it's not like a beach. It's it hits the rocks and all that. So with whatever we were able to do and get in and not to bother the actors too much, because it is all about them. You know what I mean? It's just let them start talking, let them get into the roles, and not be hassling them or whatever. We were able to, I have a relationship with Brendan anyway, and I've worked with him a good few times before, and you know, he knows if I come up to do something, you know, he knows it's there. I'm not coming up just to go here and how you, whatever we do, we work it out, and we were well able to do it. You know, we had the I don't know who we had on our side to, you know, suppress the fear that you have, because the minute we turn over, you know, you want to send them what it is, you know, and as Chris was saying, like every bit of them, we want to give it to them, you know, you want to give them the raw dialogue, the feeling, the emotions, the whatever that you can't get as good if you end up going back to the studio to pick it up, you know.
No.
So it was pretty challenging, but you know, we got it, you know. It was brilliant, you know, and it sort of puts a bit of excitement in it, because it, you know, because you think, well, it's an island and stuff, but the way they placed it, you were always on, you know, looking forward to watching this, seeing that, you know, anything that we could do, we were doing it to suppress, you know, because as it was, I mean, like, you know, I was delighted when it was the island. I was like, okay, well, we've no traffic, we won't have any of this, we won't have that. But then the elements of the, you know, what you think is quiet is the island, you know, which is the wind, the stuff. And we did have a lot of wind, in the sense that, you know, some of the sets we had, we couldn't film them for 1 day or 2 days, because they thought they were going to get blown away
because it was so blowy.
Because it was, you know. But we managed to overcome the natural backgrounds that were thrown at us. But yeah, no, it was really good.
I'm amazed actually, because I would have thought with so much external shoots involved in this film that there would have been a ton of ADR. You guys are suggesting that there really wasn't. Like, Chris, how does that happen? Like, were you lucky? Like, explain it.
I mean, I do think it was you know, the perfect storm is a bad phrase to use in this, because it's the opposite in a sense. It's a weird culmination of you bring all your skills to, is it many things that you've learned over the years to take dialogue and make the most of it. But you know, I could choose 3, 4, 5 scenes where, you know, I've got the two characters, Dominic and Porrig, on the wall with the cliff behind. It could be a scene with Brendan and Colin. I'm going between actors and character names. And I would say 19 times out of 20, that would have had some ADR lines in there. You know, how many times I've done that over the years. And we could just sculpt the sound. And I actually don't even know how many lines of ADR there are. And for technical reasons, it's borderline zero. There are a few artistically, just the odd line in the pub, just to propel. I mean, really insane. It's a joy for a dialogue mixer. It's kind of wonderful. It's totally selfish a joy, and for the filmmakers, because you know, it just you know, scenes scenes when Dominic goes and stays with Siobhan and Porrig, you know, they're just 3-way conversation. You're getting details. You're allowing Colin to whisper, and you're still getting that, and you just rise and fall with all that dialogue. I mean, you're absolutely right. You're very astute to say that typically you'd look at that, you'd see the hair flapping around, on the seaside, ADR every time, and they're great actors. So I've done other films with Colin this year, and there was 13 Lives, for example, different and Underwood, and there was technical things that you had to ADR. He would have pulled it off, and they were all there. I've had ADR from the various actors, and Simon will know that, but there was no need. It was astonishing.
Yeah,
I mean, really, something really special.
If I'm a filmmaker, that's what I'm aiming for, and I know how rare it is. I need to talk about this particular scene with you both, because obviously you can tell I love this movie, but my favorite scene is where Dominic, where Siobhan rebuffs Dominic's romantic advances gently but heartbreakingly by the lakeside. I had the pleasure of speaking to Kerry Condon about it, because it's just such a beautiful scene, and it really got me. And then I realized when I watched it for the second time that the sound is really special. I can't even really put it into words, Simon, but what would you suggest was the the main driver in getting that particular scene right? Because I think it's so pivotal for the whole movie.
Yeah, it's getting once they give you the headroom, the shots, we can work with something, and we were able to, because it was pretty blustery that day as well, and we had the lapping of the lake, which it's a beautiful recording to record, but we mightn't want it in the film, So, and I guess then you don't want them to do too much of a presence of it or whatever. But it worked out well that time, in the sense that we were able to get in, and whatever we were able to do, we did. We put in whatever we needed to, and we were able to pull the scene, into the picture.
What about you?
Yeah, again, a classic kind of the process. So often mixing for me is this technical, challenging one where you're dialogue pre-mixing. And before, my responsibility is dialogue and music, and then there's Jonathan Rush on sound effects. But for me, that scene did have a little bit of waterlap on some of the reverse angles and so on. And again, we were just able to pick and choose and just denoise just enough. I mean, you've chosen one of the scenes. It's just, again, when you watch that again, the physical acting, the motion, and Marta. I've seen an interview with Marta where, again, an interviewer talks about the heartbreaking nature of those lines, and the scene starts off with a really gentle bit of music as well going in, and Martin again did not want it to come and be dramatic when we see the old lady on the other side of the lake, and then there's a little startle, and then it just is beautiful. And again, if it had been noisy, it would have been that classic thing of picking and choosing, doing a line of ADR here and there, and it is just beautifully quiet.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, and the emotion just it elevates there. It is elevated by that, the ability that we had to keep it all real in the original recordings.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously a lot of this film is about the two main guys, but I hope if this film does really well at the Oscars that they show that clip, because it's just incredible. Also, Carabella's score is haunting, beautiful, organic, not what I was expecting. And so then I'm curious, Chris, given your work with the music in the mix, how much scope is there for collaboration with the composer on something like this? Are you in silos, or do you work together?
Occasionally there's a little bit of back and forth, but again, Martin, the beauty of Martin as a director, apart from the fact that he doesn't make as many films as we want him to make more, is that he has already a good idea of where he's going with whether it's some score that's like the early cues that weren't the Carter's cues, the Bulgarian, the choir and things like that. Those are chosen in the edit suite, and they become absolutely just part and parcel. They're in the Avid, and then as soon as the score is recorded, it really is a case of Martin making those choices, and that comes to the dub. I haven't had a situation where we fed back and we've said a cue's not working, oh, it needs to be re-recorded, or I need to technically go back and ask for something different. The Carter and his team produced these beautiful. This film was mixed in 5.1. Again, that probably makes sense to people who know that the potential to go in Dolby Atmos and so on. It was felt this film should just have that beautiful simplicity at 5.1. You can also the film can be up mixed to Atmos and retain that simplicity.
Sure.
But that's part of what Carter and his team, and then the mixer through to delivering stems to me. It was just very simple and transparent. And again, I don't have to get in there and do a lot of work on individual stems. I have the luxury of a master fader that just kind of glides up and down, and then I have a bit of guidance from Martin where to push and pull. But it's just a slightly interesting. Our position in the post-production line, we're at the end often, and certain things are decided sometimes budget-wise or whatever, whether it's something we redone or whatever. But if we're lucky, it's the good stuff has been chosen, and it's wonderful to have it under my, what a luxury to have that on the faders on the desk. All the elements, really.
Absolutely. Simon, is this the first time you've worked with Martin McDonagh?
It is.
Yeah, I thought it was. I know, Chris, you have obviously worked with him before, but and Chris very beautifully has kind of communicated what he most admires about working with Martin. What about you, Simon? It's your first time. What did you most value about what Martin McDonagh brings to a production? Because us fans just want to see, as Chris said, more from him because he's so good. What do you think about him as a filmmaker?
Very scary. And I mean that nicely in the sense that, because you read the script and I know the actors and I know what we're dealing with here. So there's a slight bit of pressure where you're going. It's my first time working with Martin, and obviously you want, besides normally doing what you do, you just know that this should be what we can get it, And Martin was fantastic with it, if there was any situations or anything that I had to do or whatever, he would be there to listen to me and we'd work it out. But he's a great one to work for, and as in the pressure, the pressure's on you to get your stuff, but you sort of keep it that way because you don't want to have to feel that Martin, is making any other thing. You're just going, I want to keep this pressure up because it will help the film.
Yeah, he's elevating. I think a great filmmaker elevates his team, and this is why every single film he's done, I've just been completely in love with. I'm like a complete nerd and fan. I want to talk about the Oscars for a little bit before we go, because obviously Gold Derby, this is what we are obsessed about. The Oscars pretty recently combined sound mixing, sound editing into one category, and that was a little controversial, but a lot of your peers in the industry have said it's no big deal, it's fine. I'm hoping that films like Banshees are nominated because it's so different. I mean, Chris, you've been nominated before for Captain Phillips, and you've worked on Top Gun Maverick, very different to this. And Simon, you did some amazing work on Foundation, one of my favorite shows of the year, so good. It's very different to this. Do you hope that your colleagues and peers in the sound branch take notice of films like this that do something a little different, bit nuanced, bit austere, but also just as complicated?
Yeah, well, look, I hope that that when you're given something like this, that you we call it listen to it. You know what I mean? And the fact that Martin has done, and the fact that I was able to do what I was able to do, so it's not your Hollywood buster, or you're up against Maverick or whatever it is, Top Gun, where you have all your stereo shit going on or whatever. This is what it is, and it's it's a fantastic example of what we do when we go to work. To come back and say, well, look, it's all ours. We're not going in adding this, or we're not going in adding that.
Yeah.
So I would hope that in that situation that they would say, wow, we did well.
What about you, Chris? Final word.
I mean, I think I'll try to quickly say, I think probably experience tells you over the period of time, and you'll be familiar with that, keeping an eye on all these awards, that reality is that a big part of the voting public will always gravitate towards something that is more multi-layered and so on. I've had some really good chats with people I really value their critique, and they recognize what we did and this, but I think there will be I'm not going to say legitimate blind spot, whatever. I think there are certain projects that just always fall a bit under the radar. I think because this is such a stunning bit of work, it does raise it a bit higher, and if there is a subset of the people who are watching it who recognize there's something really quite special about the sound, but I think the headline news on louder, or more traditional sounding films will always have the sort of upper hand, I think, so
yeah. It just is what it is. But in the meantime, look, you guys should be so proud. Congratulations on some wonderful work, and thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.